Week 10 fantasy football start sit strategy for every single game, matchups that matter, going through over-unders and pace of play and DVOA matchups and who you should start, who you should sit. Everything will be covered in today's video. If you enjoy at any point, leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here. We're going to start it off by going through the Berlin game. We do have a 9:30 a.m. kickoff game, so if you're on the West Coast, make sure you get up early to set your lineups. We also have 7 p.m. games, 4 p.m. games, and then a regularly scheduled Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football game. The Berlin game that we have here is the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Germany to take on the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, neutral site game, but technically the Colts are the home team. -6.5 points. The Colts are favored. 48.5 is the total over-under for this game. If you guys recall last week, the Colts laid a stinker against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The over-under catching a little bit of the steam here on the over. Pace of play is pretty solid. Atlanta's DVOA matchup, actually a really nice advantage versus the Colts defense, who of course do now have Sauce Gardner, but generally have been pretty exploitable. Start Daniel Jones versus the Falcons. He is definitely a viable streaming quarterback this week. I do think if you're desperate, if you have Mahomes on bye or Dak Prescott on bye, you could go out and stream Michael Penix as well, given the matchup. I don't think Sauce will play a full complement of snaps in this game, and Penix did just come off of his first 3-touchdown game of the season. Both running backs have league average matchups, and of course, you're going to be starting Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor every single week, but both defenses are about average against the run. Start Drake London versus the Colts. Of course, we know what he did last week. 3 touchdowns a week ago. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and Alec Pierce, all of them are viable plays. Of course, Pittman's an every week starter, but Downs and Pierce have kind of rotated who gets the big plays, who gets the touchdowns every single week, and given the strength of this offense, I do think you could throw either of them out there if you needed to, and the fact that it's a 48.5 point over-under game. Tyler Warren's in your lineup every single week at tight end. Kyle Pitts, a very, very good matchup. The 30th ranked defense against opposing tight ends, the Indianapolis Colts. And then if you do need a defense, I think the Colts defense is in play, although I will say it's not a very good defense, and the Falcons can score points, and I do think both kickers are in play as well, but specifically Michael Badgley of the Indianapolis Colts, the better play of the two of them. Stat of the game for this one, the Falcons get a Colts defense who has faced the second most red zone plays in the NFL as a defense in total. So a lot of teams are able to move the ball easily on the Colts, and that's actually been the problem for the Falcons. If anybody's been watching the Falcons in depth, they've kind of had a lot of stalled drives, a lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of little mistakes like drops and whatnot, killing drives. So getting into the red zone would be really crucial for Drake London, who of course scored 3 red zone touchdowns last week, and of course Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Moving into the 1 p.m. window, we have the Carolina Panthers, the 5-4 Carolina Panthers, taking on the New Orleans Saints. NFC South battle here. The Panthers are 5.5 point favorites. They are implied for 22.5 points. 39.5 is the over-under, so not a very exciting game environment, but I do like the over to hit here. The most steam of any matchup on the entire slate. The Sharps are banging the over on that 39.5, and I expect it probably by Sunday to be like 40.5 or 41 points. Pace of play, the single highest on the slate. This is maybe the lock of the century as far as this game going over, although both defensive matchups are pretty tough on the opposing offenses, neither of which are good. Bryce Young is a streamable quarterback. I know he was terrible against the Packers last week, but they basically just ran the ball, and I do think Bryce Young has a nice, easy matchup here. Rico Dowdle is going to be in your lineup, who of course is now the starting running back for the Carolina Panthers. Alvin Kamara has been brutal the last couple of weeks, but I do think he could bounce back in this matchup, giving him flex consideration at the very least. I don't think he's a great option, but if you needed to throw him out there, you could. Chris Olave, now without Rashid Shaheed, because he's obviously been traded to the Seattle Seahawks, Chris Olave should command even more of the New Orleans Saints targets. Tetairoa McMillan going to be in your lineup given his target share, and because Rashid Shaheed is no longer in New Orleans, I think Juwan Johnson is a very viable every week streamable tight end, especially in this matchup where Carolina can be susceptible over the middle of the field. If you need a defense, I think Carolina is not a bad one, and their kicker also not a bad kicker as well. Stat of the game for this one is that the Saints run in between the tackles nearly 60% of the time, which is kind of weird considering that's not really the strength of Alvin Kamara's game. The second highest rate in the league. The Panthers are allowing 5.15 yards per carry, which is the second highest to opposing teams who run in between the A and B gaps, aka in between the tackles. So I do think that we get an Alvin Kamara bounce back from a rushing yardage perspective, and something I'm doing in this video that I don't usually do every week is I'm going to be doing a matchups that matter Pickem entry. If you guys do want to tail it, you can obviously do that. I like the higher on Alvin Kamara's rushing yards. 35.5 rushing yards is what it's set at. And the Panthers winning last week was an elite call on my part. I literally said Packers, Panthers. I could see the Panthers winning that game outright. So I'm going to start building out a Pickem entry with flex caliber players going forward. Moving into the New York Giants taking on the Chicago Bears. Bears are at home for this one. 4.5 points is the over-under. The over catching a lot of the steam, even though it's already high at 46.5. And the pace of play is also quite high in this game. Both defenses are pretty bad, so the opposing offense has pretty much free reign to have a top 12 advantage in this matchup. So I do really like this game to potentially shoot out. Caleb Williams going to be in your lineup. Jackson Dart going to be in your lineup. Probably the two single best, I wouldn't call them streamers because they're pretty widely rostered quarterbacks, but as far as like non-every week starters, these two are as good as it gets for players you could be starting this week. DeAndre Swift should be back for this game versus a New York Giants run defense that is pretty much the worst in football, and DeAndre Swift did log a full practice as of yesterday, Thursday, so I wouldn't expect him to be really limited, and I do think it's possible that he gets a little bit more of the work that he was getting before his injury because him and Menengai had been switching off a little bit more frequently because he was dealing with a groin issue, but it is possible now that Menengai had such a great game that he gets more work as a result of that. Tyrone Tracy is difficult to figure out because, of course, Devin Singletary outsnapped and outcarried him last week. But as I talked about in previous videos, I do think that Tyrone Tracy will still be the back to own here. I think that Devin Singletary may have just had the hot hand, and that's kind of why they rolled with him. Tyrone Tracy, of the two running backs, is definitely my preference of who to start. Romo Dunze is expected to see shadow coverage from Paulson Adebo, who, when healthy, has been pretty good in shadow coverage. Wan'Dale Robinson and DJ Moore are both in play if you need flex options in this game. Colston Loveland, definitely a streamable, if not top 10 tight end play this week, even though Cole Kmet is back at practice. I do expect Colston Loveland to probably have had his breakout game against the Bengals and now be the starting tight end going forward. Theo Johnson, if you need a streaming tight end because you have Jake Ferguson or Travis Kelce on bye, I think he's one of the best widely available tight end pickups that you could go after. And then if you do need a defense, I probably wouldn't start a defense in this game given the game environment, but the Bears can get their hands on some turnovers at times. Jackson Dart is prone to turning the ball over at times as well. So if you need a defensive streamer, I think the Bears favored by 4.5 points. You could do worse. And Cairo Santos, also a very good kicking streamer as well. Stat of the game, I could list 47 stats why the New York Giants are horrendous against the run. I didn't feel like wasting your time with that. But how about the Bears defense being dead last in explosive pass rate allowed? So this, in my opinion, the explosive pass catcher on the Giants is Darius Slayton. This could be a game where he finds a long touchdown or whatever the case is. So I like him to go higher than 20.5 for his longest reception. This is also a good like dumpster dive game as well. So if you guys need some flex options that are widely available, Darius Slayton's a good one. Devin Singletary, maybe you picked up this week. Olamide Zaccheaus is probably not a bad one either. Theo Johnson at tight end, like I said, and both quarterbacks are available in some leagues as well. So a lot of good like low-end plays that you could maybe pick up off of waivers and throw into your lineup in what should be a high-scoring game. This game, not so much. Houston Texans taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll keep this one brief. 37.5 point over-under doesn't make it fantasy appealing at all. The only thing I will say about this game is that the Jaguars being favored by only 1 point at home versus Davis Mills is really shocking to me. I think by the time kickoff reaches, this one could be moved to 2.5, maybe even 3 points, because maybe part of this was factoring in that Stroud could play or something like that. But yeah, the Jaguars, I think, cover probably 2.5 or 3 points very easily here. This game, you probably don't want to be starting too many players because I don't think Brian Thomas is going to be active. He hasn't been practicing with that ankle issue. Trevor Lawrence, not a starter because you won't have Brian Thomas out there and you don't have Travis Hunter out there. So it'll be Jacoby Myers, who just got there, Parker Washington, who's obviously there, and then maybe some De'Ami Brown and whatnot there, but not a lot of great weapons for Trevor Lawrence in this game, so definitely don't start him. Travis Etienne can be in your lineup, though. He is getting the workload. He's an every week starter for that reason. It is a tough matchup for him. Woody Marks, very difficult run defense matchup, specifically in the red zone. The Jaguars are number one in lowest success rate allowed to opposing running games. So Woody Marks and Nick Chubb probably going to have a hard time punching in a touchdown, but Woody Marks can catch some passes in this game. Nico Collins is in your lineup. He got 10 targets, had like 7 receptions last week. He's definitely actually been okay with Davis Mills when he's been out there too. If you do need a low-end flex play, again, I think there's better options out there, but Parker Washington is not a bad one if you picked him up off of waivers. Dalton Schultz, also not a bad option if you need a streaming tight end this week. I think he's one of the better options out there. He actually has the best matchup of any tight end in fantasy football this week. And I think with Davis Mills, he'll be a little conservative, probably throw to his tight end quite a bit. Both defenses are in play given the over-under of this game. PFF's red zone matchup preview, like I said, has the Jaguars listed as the most successful red zone rushing defense in the NFL, 22.2% success rate. At the same time, though, They are the least successful pass defense in the red zone with a 59.1% success rate in the red zone. So I would say if you guys are looking for an anytime touchdown pick, Nico Collins might not be a bad option in this one, nor would Dalton Schultz or even Christian Kirk potentially. Buffalo Bills taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Bills are 9.5-point road favorites in this game, 50-point over-under. The under catching a little bit of the steam here. The pace of play is kind of slow, but the Bills have the number one advantage of any offense versus any defense of any team on the slate in Week 10. Josh Allen in your lineup, James Cook in your lineup, Dalton Kincaid an every week starter right now, given how he's performed. In Dalton Kincaid's healthy games, meaning the only game that he wasn't healthy in was the one he played half the snaps. The Panthers got blown out. Kincaid didn't practice all that week with an oblique injury. Pretty much in every other healthy game, he's been an elite tight end. He's a 15-point per game scorer without that game and a 13.2 point per game scorer with that game. So he is an every week starter, especially in this matchup. Devon Achane going to be in your lineup. Jalen Waddle definitely in your lineup, given the involvement that those two guys have in this offense. Of course, nobody's messing with Tua Tagovailoa. I do want to point your attention to Khalil Shakir being one of the better starts of flexible kind of wide receivers as well this week. Buffalo's defense definitely in play, given the turnover-prone nature of Tua Tagovailoa these days, and Matt Prater, the kicker, also in play. The stat of the game here is that no wide receiver has a single easier matchup than Khalil Shakir of any wide receiver on the Week 10 slate. Per fantasy points, wide receiver cornerback matchups, Minkah Fitzpatrick, who is the slot cornerback matchup here, has allowed the most fantasy points per route run this season and the highest target rate to opposing slot wide receivers. So Khalil Shakir, I like him to go higher than 46.5 receiving yards, and I do think if you have him, he's a very good option to throw out there. If you need some dumpster dive plays, I think there's some good options in this game as well. Malik Washington, not a bad option. Keon Coleman, not a bad option. Ray Davis, maybe if James Cook is limited in any way, but he's probably not going to be. So, a couple of good dumpster dive plays there. And moving into the next game, we have the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Minnesota Vikings. The Ravens are 4-point road favorites in this game. We saw J.J. McCarthy do some corny ass, in his zone kind of clip that went viral. We'll see what he looks like in this game because, this is his fourth ever start. He's pretty much only looked good on like scripted plays and in that fourth quarter of the Week 1 game. He's been very hot and cold. Let's see how he sustains some offense. He also didn't really throw the ball a ton because they were able to run the ball decently and get some turnovers on defense last week against the Lions. The Ravens being 4-point favorites and having an over-under of 49 points makes them implied for 26.5 here, and the over is catching quite a bit of the steam, so you got to start all your Ravens. Lamar Jackson's in your lineup, Derrick Henry's in your lineup, although he does have a really tough matchup interior rushing-wise. The Vikings are one of the best defenses in the league at those type of runs. And then, of course, you're also going to start Zay Flowers. And I think you could throw Mark Andrews out there because with Andrews, you're pretty much just hoping he catches a touchdown. That's all you can hope for out of Mark Andrews at this point in his career. He's not going to have 9 catches anymore. He's probably more of a 3-catch and you hope he catches a touchdown type of play. But I do think you can put him out there given this matchup that he has. And also on the Viking side of things, I think that J.J. McCarthy is one of the best streaming quarterbacks this week because he runs 25-plus rushing yards and or a touchdown in every start of his career so far. And also the Ravens are a pretty susceptible defense to pretty much everything, whether it's the run, 28th for Aaron Jones, assuming he plays with that shoulder injury, and then the pass, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, the 26th easiest matchup, and even TJ Hawkinson, the 15th easiest matchup there. So keep an eye on the Vikings backfield. That's the one issue that we don't really know about right now. Is Aaron Jones going to play or is it going to be Jordan Mason? When it's Jones, it looks like he is slightly the starting running back at this point in time. Stat of the game here is that the Vikings are number 1 in football in pressure rate. You heard that right. Number 1 in football. Their pressure rate is nearly 50%. So this is a team that, of course, they blitz a lot. They're getting home with their blitzes. They're actually number 1 in pressure rate by like 4%. Like, it's not even close who's the best pressuring team in football right now. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are 6th worst in the NFL at allowing pressure. So I do think there's going to be a lot of quick throws, maybe a lot of scramble runs for Lamar Jackson, short passes to Isaiah Likely, short passes to Zay Flowers, short passes maybe even to Justice Hill. If you guys need a real desperation play, I think Justice Hill is not a terrible one. Rashad Bateman, not a terrible desperation play either. TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, and Isaiah Likely, all good dumpster dive type of plays in this game. Moving into the Cleveland Browns taking on the New York Jets. The Browns are 2-point road favorites in this game. The Jets, of course, just traded away 2 of their best players, Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner. We still, of now, don't know if Justin Fields is going to play this game. We don't know if he's going to start or if it's going to be Tyrod Taylor. I suspect, given that they won their first game before the bye, that it will be Justin Fields because what's the point of playing Tyrod Taylor? Like, you're like a 1-win football team. You might as well see if the young kid can do something for you. And for Justin Fields' sake, maybe he can revive his career in this situation here. Over-under is 38 points, though, so this is not a very good game environment. Both offenses, terrible matchups. Justin Fields, if he plays, is a viable streamer because of his rushing ability and what he can do with his legs. The only real guys that I care about in this game are Breece Hall, who's an every week starter at running back, although he does have the second hardest rushing defense matchup in the league. Garrett Wilson, who of course is an every week starter at wide receiver. And it does sound like Garrett Wilson will play in this game. And of course I have to play him in my home league. So that's just classic. Quinshon Judkins should be up for this game as well. The shoulder injury doesn't seem to be a major issue. Like looking at the injury report, I'm actually going to do this live because I don't actually know what his injury status is at the current moment. Quinshon Judkins, of course, if you guys remember, suffered the AC joint sprain before the week, and he is not even on the injury report. So it looks like he's just going to be just fine. And speaking of Garrett Wilson, he is limited in both of the last 2 days. If he gets in a full participation today on Friday, he should be good to go as well. David Njoku, keep an eye on this. Harold Fannin was downgraded from no injury designation to did not practice on Thursday with a hamstring. So maybe he suffered that on Wednesday's practice or early in Thursday's practice or something like that, because he is now maybe questionable for this game, and that would really upgrade David Njoku, and he would be a top 10 to 12 play at the tight end position, assuming he's alone in that tight end core. And if Fannin doesn't play, I think if you're desperate, you maybe could throw Jerry Jeudy out there as well, but not a really good game environment. If you need a streaming defense, Cleveland's defense is streamable, and their kicker is streamable. I would not stream the Jets defense, even though they are the home team in this game, because they just lost their 2 best defensive players. Stat of the game here is that this matchup features 2 teams that are second to last and third to last in offensive series success rate, aka they basically turn the ball over like crazy and have 3 and outs and punt all the time. So if you don't have to start somebody in this game, I wouldn't. My first glance was like, oh, maybe Jerry Jeudy's interesting here. But even with Harold Fannin potentially being out, there's probably better dumpster dives to go after here. So moving into the final 1 p.m. game of the slate, and this is by far the most exciting one between the Tom Brady Bowl here, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the New England Patriots. My Buccaneers are favored by 2.5 points. Tampa Bay implied for 25.25. New England implied for just under 23. The over-under is 48. Now, again, talking about locks and whatnot, this game's going under. I do not see this game being a shootout, and 48 points is a lot for 2 teams, A, who may have difficult matchups against the opposing defenses, specifically as it relates to running the ball, and B, the Bucs are the home team, the one implied for more points here, and they have struggled as an offense and are missing a ton of players here. So I do not see this game going over. I don't think this is going to be a shootout, but if you do need to start the quarterbacks, I think you can. Baker Mayfield and Drake May, both pretty much every week starters, or at least very high-end streamers in Baker Mayfield's case. You could definitely throw those guys out there. Trevion Henderson probably will start for the New England Patriots because Ramondre Stevenson, as of today, still has not practiced and probably will miss this game with his turf toe injury. The Buccaneers really good against the run, but they have allowed the most receiving yards per game to running backs, and Trevion can, of course, catch a lot of passes and maybe break a long one in this one. Rashad White also going to get the start most likely because Bucky Irving is out yet again and probably won't be back until, I'd imagine, like week 12, week 13. Like we thought, oh, maybe he's going to be back coming off of the bye because he wasn't put on IR, but he has now missed his 5th game in a row. So putting him on IR maybe would have been the right thing to do if we were the Buccaneers and we were making decisions here. Emeka Egbuka is expected to see shadow coverage from Christian Gonzalez. Now, Christian Gonzalez has only been back for a couple of weeks, but he has shadowed some receivers when they're the clear number 1. And Egbuka right now is the clear number 1. And Egbuka also said since the Detroit Lions game when Mike Evans went down, and we've seen Egbuka's production be down in this period of time, he's been getting shadow coverage. He's been getting shaded safeties over the top and stuff because he's the only threat out there right now. They don't have Godwin. They don't have Evans. They don't have Jalen McMillan. They don't have Bucky Irving. Like, there's no real threats outside of Emeka Egbuka. So I do think not only is he going to get shadow coverage, but he'll probably get over-the-top shading as well. So Emeka Egbuka may have a dud in this game. I hope he doesn't for my sake because I have him in the flock league, but it is possible he doesn't have a great game here. Stephon Diggs and Tez Johnson, if you need flex options in this game, are pretty decent. If Kayshon Boutte is out, which is not guaranteed at this point in time, you could also maybe throw Demario Douglas out there as well. Stream both tight ends if you need one. Hunter Henry, Cade Otton, both like top 20 tight ends for me this week. You could throw them out there if you needed them, and definitely play Chase McLaughlin, and Nick Folk is in play as well at the kicker position. Stat of the game here is that this game features 2 defenses that are both top 8 in EPA per play allowed. So these are 2 defenses playing really, really well, which is why I think this game is going under. Both defenses are also top 5 in every major rushing defense metric that you can look at. So this is a team and a game environment that will require people to drop back and pass, and I do think they're going to struggle in doing that because when you're doing that, you get blitzed by Todd Bowles, and Baker Mayfield doesn't have great protection at this point in time and not a lot of weapons to throw to. So This game probably going to feature a lot of short passes, specifically short right, which weird stat. The New England Patriots lead the league in giving up passes short right, which is like, and they're like way ahead of everybody else. So it's just a random weird idiosyncrasy with their defense right now. Well, who ranks number one in short right receptions on the Buccaneers this season? Tez Johnson. So he is a very good flex play in this game, and I like him to go higher than 3.5 receptions. I think they're going to get a lot of pressure, and they're going to have to manufacture some looks for a guy who can get out in space, and Tez Johnson getting a lot of receptions makes a lot of sense for me in this game, and you should definitely play him if you guys need a top 35 to 40 wide receiver play. Moving into the 4 p.m. window, we have the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle implied for 25.75 points. The over-under of 45 points, over catching 11% of the steam here. The pace of play is 5th best of any pace of play game on the slate here, and the Seattle Seahawks have the 4th highest DVOA advantage. This game features one of my most difficult decisions in the Flock League. You guys are going to see the clip that I make about it, but I'm facing Mason this week in the Flock League, and I'm deciding between Kenneth Walker and Kamani Vidal, and I'm leaning towards Kenneth Walker, which I'll detail in that clip if you guys are watching the vlogs. But part of why I like Walker this week, and also just all the Seahawks players, is the Cardinals' defense is pretty susceptible to pretty much everything. You can run against them, you can pass against them, you can throw explosive plays against them. They're actually success rate per drop back as an offense. The Seahawks are number 1 in the NFL, and the Cardinals as a defense are 7th in success rate allowed per drop back, which is the stat of the game. So big game potentially for Sam Darnold, JSN, maybe the run game as well. Kenneth Walker coming out of the bye, posted a season high in snap share, season high in route participation, and also had a couple of targets in that game. So pretty interesting game environment. On the Cardinals side of things, Marvin Harrison and Jacoby Brissett seem to have a great connection, so definitely throw Marvin Harrison out there. Of course, Trey McBride is an every week starter at tight end. If you're looking for a running back play on the Cardinals, because Zonovan Knight technically had the most snaps, DeMercado played the best and had the most carries, I would say that it's probably DeMercado that you would want to start, but it is more of like a, I don't want to start any of them because this is a good rushing defense and a good defense overall, and they're on the road in Seattle. It's a very difficult place to play. I just wouldn't expect much from the Cardinals running backs, and I wouldn't expect much from Jacoby Brissett in the offense in general, but Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride got to be out there for you given their target shares and whatnot. If you need a streaming tight end, I think A.J. Barner's not a terrible option. Streaming defense, Seattle, not a bad option, nor is Jason Myers the kicker. Los Angeles Rams taking on the San Francisco 49ers. It's a rematch of the Week 5 Thursday Night Football game, which was crazy. Mac Jones and the 49ers pulled that one out. The Rams are 4.5-point road favorites in this game, so Vegas not giving San Francisco too much respect here because Mac Jones probably going to start again. Brock Purdy limited in practice. It does sound like he's not quite ready to make his return from that toe injury. 49.5-point over-under right now, which is one of the highest on the slate, the second highest. The pace of play, second highest on the slate. The Rams' DVOA advantage, second highest on the slate. I mean, it goes without saying that you're starting Stafford, you're starting Kyron, you're starting Puka Nacua, you're starting Devontae Adams. Those are all pretty straightforward. Best matchup on the field, definitely Kyron Williams in this game. We saw what he did, 10-plus targets in this matchup last time they played. Christian McCaffrey, horrendous matchup in this game. He does not have a good matchup, and I do think that it's possible he has a dud in this one, but for the most part, he's going to be every week starter. He's one of the best running backs in fantasy. You guys know that. Juwan Jennings, pretty good starter in this game. If you guys need a flex play, I think he's not a bad one. His routes, his targets, and all that stuff have been up since he's been really banged up the last couple of games. I do think he should probably have a decent game in this one. Kendrick Bourne, if you guys remember, last time these two teams played, had 150 yards against this team. And Mac Jones and him had a mind meld like nobody's business against this team. So I do think if you need a flex option, he's not a bad one. George Kittle, of course, going to be in your lineup as an every week starter. And both kickers, I think, are usable options in this game, given that this is a high over-under, and both of these teams like to settle for field goals in the red zone and that kind of thing. The Rams are number 1 in EPA per play as a defense. And their only blip on the radar really was that monster performance by the 49ers in that Thursday night game in Week 5. If you guys recall, Kendrick Bourne, 150 yards in that game, 32.5 receiving yards. Is this higher or lower here? I like him to go higher than that. If you guys do need some dumpster dive plays, this is a good game environment for it. Kendrick Bourne being one of them, Blake Corum being another if you need to start another running back, Brian Robinson maybe even being another one if you needed to start another running back. There's a couple of guys. You could even throw Tutu Atwell or Tyler Higbee out there if you absolutely had to. Detroit Lions taking on the Washington Commanders, the final 4 p.m. game here. The Lions are 8-point road favorites. The Commanders will be without Jane Daniels, who isn't done for the season by the sounds of it, because they had a report today that he dislocated his elbow, but it doesn't need to be surgically repaired, so maybe he's not even going to get put on IR. Don't exactly know. If I were the Commanders, I would just wipe my ass with this season because it's probably over. 49.5 points is the over-under in this game. A lot of that being charged to the Detroit Lions at 29 or 28.75 implied points. Their DVOA advantage is top 5 on the slate. This game, to me, just screams Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery rush all over this team, because this is a team that's will is kind of broken right now. We just saw the Seahawks beat the daylights out of them on Sunday Night Football. Jared Goff, excellent matchup. I do think he might just get sniped on all the touchdowns by the running backs. I think Gibbs could rush 2 or 3 touchdowns in. Montgomery could rush 2 touchdowns in. Sit Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He has just been absolutely awful the last month. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams definitely in your lineup given the implied total here. Deebo Samuel, given that Terry McLaurin is out and he's getting the targets he's getting, he can definitely be in your lineup. Sam Laporta has been awesome as of late too, so he can be in your lineup. Zach Ertz, if you guys need a streaming tight end, is not a terrible option. And then the Detroit Lions defense and kicker both in play. Per PFF, the Commanders defense is 31st in red zone rushing success rate. 2 opposing running backs allowed. Like I just said, this game screams 2+ touchdowns for Jahmyr Gibbs, 2+ touchdowns for David Montgomery. This is a 45-10 stomping by the Detroit Lions waiting to happen. And I do think it'll come at the hands of the running game. So if you have to play Montgomery or Gibbs, RIP to you, because I think this is going to be a monster game from the run game of the Detroit Lions. Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Chargers are 3-point home favorites in this game, basically a neutral site pick'em between these two teams. They're both kind of evenly matched. The over-under 45 points. Pace of play is 28.8, which is 5th highest on the slate. Both of these offenses do have slight advantages, or maybe slight disadvantage in Pittsburgh's case, of the opposing defense. This will be an interesting Sunday Night Football game because Justin Herbert and Aaron Rodgers, both very talented quarterbacks. The run games are both kind of hampered to some degree, but I do think Jalen Warren's still a great start in this one. Kamani Vidal, man, like what the hell was that last week? I had him as a top 12 running back against the Titans defense, and he finished with 3 fantasy points. And this Steelers defense just wiped the floor with Jonathan Taylor last week in the backfield constantly. He couldn't get anything going, and that is, basically the leader for Offensive Player of the Year right now. So Kamani Vidal, I'd be really worried about starting, and that's why I'm kind of hesitating on this decision between him and Walker in the Flock League. But I do think the pass game is how you want to play this for the Chargers. Ladd McConkey has been really solid at commanding targets. Quentin Johnson, of course, creating big plays. Keenan Allen right now is unstartable. Even in this matchup, he is not getting the routes. Trey Harris is factoring in. Aronde Gadsden, of course, is the biggest factor here in his emergence, and he's going to be in your lineup. But Keenan Allen can't be out there for you. Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, and Aronde Gadsden, the starters at the pass catchers there for the Chargers, and Justin Herbert, definitely a good streaming quarterback. DK Metcalf, given his target share, is probably out there for you guys. Dicker and Boswell, 2 of the best kickers in fantasy football, definitely also out there for you. The stat of the game here: Chargers are the 2nd highest leading pass rate over expected team in the NFL, meaning they're passing the ball way more often than they are expected to, and the Steelers defense is 28th in pass rate over expected allowed, meaning they usually have teams throw on them. And I do think that that's why Kamani Vidal is not going to be that great of a play this week, and why I do think Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, and Aronde Gadsden are great plays this week. So I do think this one could go through the passing game for the Chargers. Keep in mind, too, like Joe Alt is out for the season. Like it's just going to be a tough time running the football. The Chargers are already currently, by the way, 32nd in run blocking according to PFF. So Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Green Bay Packers. The Eagles are actually favored on the road here. This one, I literally had to look this up, and I'm going to do it again because I just don't buy this line. I really don't get it. The Eagles are on the road. The line has moved since the 2.5. It is now 1.5, but still, how the hell are the Eagles favored by 2.5 or 1.5 on the road in Lambeau Field? I just don't buy this. So over under 45 points. I just don't really get this. I think that the Packers should be 1-point favorites or something like that. So if you guys are picking this game, then I do think the Packers plus 1.5 or plus 2.5, whatever you can get them at, are probably pretty good. Jalen Hurts going to be in your lineup. Saquon Barkley going to be in your lineup. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith going to be in your lineup. And Dallas Goedert going to be in your lineup. Pretty straightforward. Best matchup on the field, though, is Dallas Goedert. And also, too, we should see A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have a decent matchup, but I'll talk about that in the stat of the game a little bit more. Josh Jacobs going to be in your lineup for the Packers. If you need a streaming quarterback, Jordan Love is a decent option. Romeo Doubs, basically an every week starter at this point. Given the injury to Tucker Kraft, he's got to be out there for you. And if you need a flex option and a deeper play in this game, I think that Christian Watson's a decent one.
We'll see what's going on with Matthew Golden's health, but as of right now, Christian Watson seems to be second in the pecking order. We'll see what happens around that. Like, does Luke Musgrave emerge at tight end? Does Jaden Reed come back over the next couple of weeks, which it sounds like he's going to over the next 2-3 weeks or so? He should be back pretty soon. Stat of the game here, and this is why I kind of alluded to this. The Packers are a run funnel. They're number 1 in the NFL at limiting explosive passes. They're number 3 in the NFL in air yards per pass allowed. So Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown getting loose for a long touchdown, probably not going to happen in this game. This has to be a game, though, where Saquon Barkley takes advantage of their 16th ranked rushing EPA. We just saw Rico Dowdle run it all over them last week, and their 20th ranked success rate. The exact same game plan applies to Josh Jacobs and the Packers. The defense of the Philadelphia Eagles you can't pass deep against them. They're basically just a keep everything in front of them defense, make you run the football. So I think Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, unfortunately for me, because Mason has both of them, are going to have a lot of carries and a lot of fantasy points in this game. The matchups that matter, entry is complete. We did 5 picks. If you guys want to tail these, of course, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to do a flex entry, meaning I only need 4 out of 5 to end up hitting. Everyone who signs up on Underdog right now can also get an Aaron Rodgers gimme pick for the Monday night game, plus $100 in bonus funds on their first $5 play. And of course, make sure to use our promo code FSE to get started. That'll be linked down below in the pinned comment to ride with us. So into the streamers we go. Streaming quarterbacks, Sam Darnold versus the Arizona Cardinals. He's pretty widely rostered, but if he's available, he's one of the best available out there. Justin Fields versus the Cleveland Browns. Again, because he runs, he's always going to be a good streamer. J.J. McCarthy, same thing. Because he runs, he's a good streamer, and I do think it's a great matchup for him versus the Baltimore Ravens. Bryce Young and Michael Penix, worse streamers, obviously, than those guys. Definitely worse, but if you are desperate and you need a streaming option, Bryce Young, given the matchup, is a pretty good one, and Michael Penix, also given the game environment, is a pretty good one there. Streaming tight ends, we have Colston Loveland versus the Giants. Not really a streamer, but he shouldn't be available in as many leagues as he is, so definitely go pick up Colston Loveland. He was the best waiver ad by far of any player this week. David Njoku, given the Harold Fannin injury, is going to jump all the way up to a top streaming tight end this week if Fannin is out. Even if Fannin is active, if he's dealing with a hamstring pull, I think Njoku is one of the top streamers on the slate. Zach Ertz versus the Lions, positive game script for the Commanders. They're going to have to throw the ball. I could see him catching 7-8 passes in that game. Theo Johnson at the Chicago Bears, really good matchup for him. He's widely available. Good game environment as well. Jawan Johnson without Rashid Shaheed there. I do think he will catch a lot of passes in that game. Moving into defenses and kickers here, Denver already played. They were my number 1 defense. They had a monster game, so obviously great news for them. Houston's a great defensive play this week. They just have an awesome defense, and Trevor Lawrence is without a lot of weapons. Seattle versus Arizona, also a really good defensive play this week. Los Angeles Rams versus the 49ers. Detroit Lions at the Washington Commanders. Buffalo at Miami. Cleveland at New York. Carolina versus New Orleans. Jacksonville and Houston in that same game. Tampa Bay versus New England, and also honorable mention to the Ravens defense versus the Vikings, just because the Broncos played yesterday, so that'll give you a 10th defense if you needed one. Top 5 kickers, we have Chase McLaughlin, Cameron Dicker, Michael Badgley, Chris Boswell, and Jake Bates. Kaimi Fairbairn, who's currently injured right now, so if he ends up being out, I'll give you some extras in a second, versus Jacksonville, assuming he plays. Eddie Pinheiro, Cairo Santos, Tyler Loop, and Jason Myers. If Fairbairn is out, Bills' Matt Prater and my number 12 and 13 are both in the same game. The Packers kicker, Brandon McManus, and the Eagles kicker, Jake Elliott. That's kind of like my top 13 kickers or so. But yeah, that's matchups that matter. That is the Week 10 slate. Hopefully I helped you guys start your fantasy football lineups, set your fantasy football lineups. I mean, if you guys do have any input on my own start decision, Kamani Vidal versus the Steelers, Kenneth Walker versus the Cardinals. I'm in a bit of a conundrum here. I think I'm going to end up going Walker based on all the research I've done on the slate and whatnot. But let me know what you guys think down below and give me some real reasons or some gut takes or whatever behind that reasoning. Leave that down below in the comments. Again, if you guys want to tail our Pickem entry, you can tail that down below in the pinned comment. If you guys want some extra help, team reviews, trade questions, start-sit questions, head on over to flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE. If you're a site subscriber, you get discounts on that stuff. Also, if you're a site subscriber, you do get some free vouchers when you sign up, either for an annual package or a season pass or whatever, so you can get some free questions answered that way. And if you're an annual Mother Flocker right now, you can get a free team review, which we do live on the channel, that you guys can definitely check out as well. So if that interests you, link down below in the pinned comment for all of that stuff. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.